Good morning, y'all. Welcome to Coffee Talk. I'm Tim. I'll be your host. So, I've got a story for you today, right? And it's about this kid in New York City, 15-year-old kid, sophomore in high school, and he's out with his friends in Central Park. They're having a picnic. So I guess that's what you do in New York. And you go to Central Park, you have a picnic. But on this day, and it's June the 20th of 2025, on this particular June day, this storm just rolls into New York City, this really severe thunderstorm, right? So this kid, this 15-year-old says, well, let's just ride it out. So instead of running for cover or anything like that, they're just going to hang out. They get under the trees. They're going to ride this storm out.
I lean up against the tree and I tell them, oh, guys, let's ride out the storm, which in hindsight might have not been the best idea.
So this kid leans up against this tree. And he's leaning on this tree and lightning strikes the tree. So the kid is out cold. Friends are freaking out, calling 911. By the time the ambulance actually gets there, the kid had actually became conscious again. And he was aware, he was injured, but he was aware, so they get him to the hospital. And they check this kid out, and miraculously, he's got some second-degree burns, but there's no permanent damage. There's no nerve damage. The doctors say he's going to make a full recovery. And so the kid says,
apparently I'm pretty lucky because my spine was directly against the tree and no nerve damage happened. So I'm not losing any sort of motor function. So I'm pretty happy about that.
And as I was thinking this morning, I was thinking about how you frame things, right? So we can take and frame something any way we want to frame it. We can frame it in a positive way. We can frame it in a negative way, but it's really our choice what we're going to do. And you can take the worst situation in your life and you can think, oh, woe is me. Or you can think, wow, man, I really learned something from that. I won't make that mistake again, right? So it's all in how we frame it. So this kid framed it in a very possible way. And I was just so, some of those stories I see like that, I just find them inspiring because we have to make choices every day on how we're going to look at something. That choice we make can determine the rest of our day, our week, our month. It can determine our life, right? The old saying is we either get bitter or we get better. There's another story that I have from long ago. And this is about an old friend of mine when I lived up north. I was 18 years old, and me and Kenny were best friends. On Friday nights, we would always do this certain activity together. And what we did doesn't matter. But we would always go to this place together and hang out and have a good time. And I remember this Friday, Kenny came to pick me up, and he says, come on, Tim, let's go. And I'm like, dude, man, I can't go tonight, bro. And he's like, oh, come on, you gotta go. And it's a normal thing that kids do to each other, right? You gotta go, you try to talk them into it, you don't want to go alone. But that night, I just didn't go. I wasn't into it, right? So Kenny goes, and later that night, he leaves this place, and he's driving down the road, and he's driving way too fast, and he had these custom mag wheels on the car, and from everything we ever found out, one of the wheels broke on his car and it threw him into a sideways slide. So he's sliding down the road. They estimated his speed at 90 miles an hour. And there's this dude coming the other way in a station wagon. And the guy was terrified when he saw this car coming at him. So how he decided to handle this accident was he just jumped onto the floorboard of his car. So he never hit the brakes. He never tried to avoid the accident. He never did anything other than hide. So his car proceeded to hit Kenny's in the driver's side door. So Kenny was killed pretty much instantly. And, I knew all Kenny's siblings. I knew his parents. We were tight. And we all had the same friends. And it was a pretty traumatic thing to deal with. And for a while, I would deal with this survivor's guilt. You have a plane crash and you have one person live and they're like, oh, I shouldn't be here. Well, that's how I felt. It's like, man, my best friend's gone. I was supposed to be with him. And why am I here? And I dealt with that for a while. And then finally I got to the point where I realized I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. Because maybe there's another plan and a purpose in my life, right? So the framing had to change. It wasn't, oh, I'm not supposed to be here, basically meaning that I'm just useless and, whatever the negatives you want to associate with that. But it was, no, there's a purpose for my life. There's a reason I didn't go that night, right? And I believe personally that God has a plan and a purpose for all of us. So things happen for a reason. I really don't believe in coincidence. I remember living up there, and this is some time after this happened, like 7 years, but I was still living in that same town up north, and things got crazy. Like I'd been in this really long-term relationship, and it went totally south. And it was all my fault. All my fault. I screwed it up. And I was pretty devastated over that. And I had quit a long-term job, went into a business with a friend of mine, and then I found out that my friend is like ripping off this business. So I'm financing this business on my credit card. I've chalked up $35,000 in debt running this company. And all of a sudden I find out my partner, who is also a very close friend of mine, is embezzling what little money we have coming in. Again, I'm like, phew, devastated. When I caught this guy stealing from me, I was so betrayed because it was my friend. And then another very close friend of mine, who was a female, but she refused to believe that the other guy could have done what he did. So not only was I dealing with the betrayal of one of my best friends, I'm also dealing with the fact that another one of my best friends thinks I'm just a liar. And I was completely telling the truth. So I remember throwing them out, and I literally was on my couch crying for like 3 days, not knowing what to do with my life. My life's falling apart, right? And so I was in the woe is me, what do I do? Then all of a sudden I get a call from a buddy of mine in Florida that I'd used to work with, who had been trying to recruit me to move to Florida for 3 years because he wanted to give me a job, because he knew I would make him money. And that call came at just the right time, right? So for the first time in 3 years, I was willing to look at the probability of maybe moving to Florida. So I get on a plane, I go to Florida, I check out this company, and 2 weeks later, I had packed up my house and I'd moved to Florida, right? And it was a pretty drastic change for me. I never wanted to live in Florida. I mean, I'm a redhead, I'm a white boy. You don't get any whiter than me, so why would I want to be in Florida? Because all I do is hide from the sun. So I really had never wanted to live here, but I found out when I got here, man, Florida's awesome. I love living in Florida. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. So I moved to Florida. I'm here for several years. I'm making more money than I've ever made. Definitely a lot better than being up north. And things are going pretty well. And then what happens is I meet this girl. And all of a sudden I fall in love with this girl and we get married. And so we have 3 kids. So now I've moved to Florida. I'm making better money. I've found a home. I've got a family of my own, and things are going pretty good. And I tell you that story because when you frame it out, sometimes we could frame it in that, look at these bad things that have happened. But I can tell you that when one door closes in your life, there's going to be another door that opens. I want you to remember that. Like today, when you're going out and you're doing your thing, and there's a lot of things happen, right? It doesn't matter if you own your own business. It doesn't matter if you work for someone else. It doesn't matter if you're a full-time student. Regardless of what you do, things are going to happen. You're going to interact with other people. You're going to have circumstances. You might be prone to road rage as you're driving wherever you got to go. But I just want to encourage you today, as you go out and you do your thing, think about how you're going to frame these things. You can frame it and get pissed off about something, or you can frame it and say, okay, maybe they're having a bad day. But there's no sense in allowing yourself to go down the negative Ninny road or the bitter road when there's always a way to get better. And I have found in my life that if I'm seeing gray clouds in the sky, if you look closely, there's a silver lining to every one of those clouds. And sometimes those silver linings may be a little bit harder to find than what you think, but I promise you that they're always there. And I've got one more thing for you guys before we cut out of here that I want to share with you, and it's a quote that a friend of mine wrote. Many of us don't understand that the pain we're going through now is just a forced, aggressive growth spurt that we want to reject. But that growth spurt is what gets you to that next level for that next task and gets you ready, because you need to go through it to do what you are called to do. And this quote was written by a very great man by the name of Aaron Stokes. And someday maybe I can share his story or what I know of it, because I certainly don't know all of it. But he was an amazing guy and impacted my life in a huge way. So I wanted to share that quote with you guys. So I hope you have a great day. Go out there and make it happen, right? Make it a great day. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.